How can I thank you enough, and Jerry and Esther, for this
You can't.
wonderful gift?
You just can't. And there is not any reason whatsoever to assign credit to anyone other than yourself for the wonderful things that are flowing to you. You've just got to get used to that. You've got to start saying, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Aren't you proud of yourselves? Look at who you are. Look at who you are.
Although I geographically come from London, England, to come here, I actually spend most of my time traveling between Yuma and Phoenix, backwards and forwards. When I find myself in a bit of contrast, which you think is wonderful because it gives us good desires, I find it not so comfortable. I think, oh, I've worked very well with this, I've written pages, and I now feel really great. And then, bang, I hit my head against the same stupid thing again. For instance, I work with the fear of death because I was born Catholic, and there is a great judge up there that's going to condemn me, and I am terrified of death. But I listen to your CDs regularly, day and night, and it says, what is awaiting for you there is much better than here. Until I'm on an aeroplane and it starts bumping around, and then I realize I'm terrified. That's just one example of my Yuma Phoenix trip. And then my mother is 87.
Well, let's walk through that just for a moment, because while you are the only one we've ever met that has this problem, it may be worth moving up the emotional scale a little bit here.
Yes,
So tell us again why you fear death.
It's not the concept of death, because I do believe you, at least intellectually. I don't know how much I believe you emotionally. But it's the actual process. I have a mother who's disintegrating. She's 89, and is terrified of death.
Wait just a little bit, because is it the decline that you are uncomfortable with? You talked about being raised Catholic, and we just want to feel if you really believe that your basis of concern is because of your worry of being judged by someone, and someone who sees that you have not jumped through the hoops in appropriate fashion. In other words, were you just entertaining us, or
No.
is there something about that you were worried about?
Well, I believe that I create my own reality.
Yes.
And I see the fear in my mother. And so I think maybe I still have a fear. Why is my mother so afraid to die? Because I think she feels that she hasn't accomplished what she should have done, or something like that. But
Well, doesn't that make you want to soothe her? In other words, why do you join her in her fear? Why do you not then remind yourself what you know? In other words, we think your analogy about the Yuma Phoenix thing is very appropriate, because when you are standing in the middle of a thought that feels so uncomfortable, doesn't it make you want to turn towards something that brings you more comfort? And so what kinds of words would you offer to someone who was standing in that place where they've been trained to be afraid of death, where they've been trained to believe in their unworthiness to the point that they dare not die? What would you like to say to them?
I've tried to explain.
Say it.
Okay.
Never mind that she can't hear you.
I say
what
that-
would you like to say to someone in that situation?
I've said the theory of paradise and hell doesn't exist. There is a much better world where everybody's happy and is joyful and we're all one. She says, you're nuts.
Well, in this dialogue, we're not really interested in what she says back to you. What we are really interested in is what you're saying to her, because we want to figure out why you keep ending up back in Phoenix. In other words, does your mother have that much influence? Can she say you're nuts and you believe it? Can she wave her hand once and say to you, what you have come to know, what your guidance system has confirmed for you, what you have practiced thinking, how you have brought yourself into vibrational alignment with this topic again and again and again and again, and your mother can wave her hand once and make you revert right back to all of those fearful thoughts?
No. No.
So say to her what you know. In other words, we would like to feel it in your vibration. We would like to hear your convictions about the blessed well-being worthiness of the perpetual soul or energy that is you.
I believe that.
Yes, well, tell us.
All right. I believe that I'm part of Source.
Yes.
And that my inner being guides me.
An inferior part, an equal part, a leading edge part. What part of Source are you?
The leading edge.
You are the leading edge of Source. Out here. Now how would someone get into that position? Were you bad? Were you inappropriate? Were you sent here to be tested? Were you sent here by someone creepy enough to hope that you would fail? Creepy enough to organize a whole bad place where the failing ones of you would go forever, ever, ever, evermore? Do you hear the absurdity of these thoughts, you see? Doesn't it make you want to say to your mother, "You're nuts"? In other words, all around you, is there a shred of evidence anywhere to the contrary of the well-being of this time-space reality? In other words, look around. Have you looked outside lately? Had the extraordinary evidence of well-being? And do you know this place didn't just get here? It's been in the process of evolving and becoming. Do you have any sense of how long it's been here and how long it will be here and how much well-being? Oh, you can find some particle of not well-being if you try real hard, but it isn't because some source has begun it. It's because someone has disallowed the well-being that would be there. It's sort of like creating a shadow and then calling it the source of darkness when all it is the blocking of the light, you see. And so you just have to keep reminding yourself through the clarity of the examples that you are living, because every now and again Esther will come across the idea of death again, and she will feel the discord that someone is feeling about the subject of death, and she will remember feeling a sort of a wafting of that old feeling that you are describing here about that. And she will say, there is such a feeling of absurdity about those thoughts because she has tasted and felt the well-being of Source on such a perpetual basis. And she now has confidence that that Source that feels like this Source feels could not be the perpetuator of that stuff. In other words, it is utterly illogical. And so what we are saying to you is that as you demand thought by thought coming back into the light that is your Source, you will be there steadily enough, often enough, mostly enough, always enough, that those kinds of conversations will be so absurd that you will find yourself laughing. Jerry and Esther years ago were dragged by a dear friend from an Abraham gathering in the city of Dallas to see the movie Ghost. And they enjoyed the drama of it and the fun of it. And in the scene, have you seen it? In the scene where the horrible demons crawled out of the ground and grabbed the terrible one, kicking and screaming off to that terrible place, Esther laughed right out loud. Her voice rang out in the theater as this one singular voice. She was not trying to make a point. She thought it was the funniest thing that she'd ever seen. How could they get it so wrong, you see? There are so many people that don't want that to be wrong. In other words, they wanted to control you a long time ago, and when they couldn't, they only hoped that your punishment would get greater and greater later. In other words, this hell that has been so manufactured by the disconnected mind of man is insecure, weak-feeling man's effort at finally getting the world to agree with him. And there are so many ridiculous versions of hell. Worry not about it. When you reemerge into non-physical, you must leave all of that fantasy behind, because it exists only in the disconnected mind of man. And when you die, you'll no longer be disconnected. So say to your mother, "Dear one, you are too beautiful for anything other than wonderful things to happen to you when you die." Say to her, "I know you're going to love it when you get there." Say to her, "I've never known anyone who cared more about being in the right place. I know you've made it." In other words, don't try to teach her what you have come to know through us. It's too much at the last minute. Instead, just soothe her in the way that you can soothe her. Say to her, "Mother, you've cared about this for so long. I know you've got it right." Don't challenge her beliefs by trying to get her to believe a whole bunch of things that she cannot find a thought. In other words, don't evoke from her, "You're nuts." Evoke from her words like, "I hope you're right." Evoke from her words like, "Well, maybe it will be all right." Remind her that she deserves well-being, and make lists of all of the reasons that you believe that. Talk about how much she cares and how good she's been to this one and this one. In other words, amplify within her. Help her bridge into the place where she expects good to come to her. Don't ask her to adopt a whole new philosophy. Yes.
I have another request. Will you come to London, please?
Yes.
Will you? Wonderful.
Oh, you mean Jerry and Esther?
Yes.
Well, you'll have to ask them about their trip, but we'll come right away.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll help you with your mother.
Thank you.
We'll remind you what you know. Don't try to tell her, but you knowing it while you're talking to her will help her. Yes.